For the first one here, we're going to start with a. We're trying to take the square root of a negative 45. Now we know we cannot actually square root a negative number. If we tried to do that in our calculator, we would get a non-real error, which means we need to kind of solve this by hand. So I'm looking to square root 45, but if I square root 45, I do get a decimal. So I'm not going to actually square root the 25 or the 45. I'm going to split it apart into a square root of positive 45 and a square root of negative 1. The square root of 45, like I said, is a decimal, so I'm going to leave it as a square root of 45. And the square root of negative 1 does become an I. That's the way we define our imaginary numbers. So I'm going to keep I in the front, and we have I square root of 45. Part B, I have another couple square roots of negatives here, so we're going to go ahead and simplify each of these. Square root of 16 is 4, with the negative does give me an I as well, so that is a 4I. Square root of negative 81, 81 square rooted gives you a 9, so this is 4I times 9I. 4 times 9 gives you 36, and I times I is I squared. Be careful and make sure that you do get the squared there. It is not just 36I. Gotta make sure you have the squared. And that's important because this I squared piece here is going to go away, and we're going to say that I squared is equal to negative 1. Again, that's the way we define our I and our I squared. 36 times negative 1 does give us a final answer here of negative 36. Part C, we're looking to solve our quadratic equation here. When I'm asking you to solve, I'm really asking you to find x, which means I need to get it by itself. So I'm going to start by getting rid of my 32 here. When I subtract the 32 to get rid of it and move it to the other side, our 32's will cancel on the left there. Negative 16 minus 32 gives us a negative 48, and we'll bring down our 3x squared. And notice how I'm moving the addition or subtraction piece first before I deal with the multiplication on my x squared. That's always the correct order to do it. Okay, at this point I can go ahead and get rid of that multiplication by dividing by 3. 3's will cancel on my x squared, leaving me with just x squared, which is going to equal 48 divided by negative 3 is negative 16. Okay, at this point I can take the square root of both sides, which leaves me with x is equal to square root of negative 16 is 4I, but because I brought in the square root and I am solving, it does need to have a plus and minus on that 4I. And the last one down here at the bottom is part D. Part D is our division of complex numbers. Again, remember, we don't really divide these, we just kind of simplify it out to get the I out of the bottom here, because that's our issue. That's our square root in our denominator that we do not like. So to do that, we multiply by the same thing on top and bottom. That piece we multiply by is the complex conjugate of the bottom. So here's going to be 3 minus 4I. Remember, those conjugates are the same real part, the same initial number on the front, that A piece, but then the BI or the imaginary part switches signs. So the positive 4I here becomes a negative 4I, and I multiply by that same piece on the top of my fraction as well. At this point I can go ahead and multiply straight across, which is really going to be a foiling problem because I'm multiplying two complex numbers together on both top and bottom. So if I multiply straight across the top, I have 4 times 3 gives me 12. 4 times a negative 4I is negative 16I. Negative 2 times 3 is negative 6I, and negative 2 times negative 4 is a positive 8I squared. Okay, as far as the bottom, I have 3 times 3 gives me 9. 3 times negative 4I is negative 12I. 4I times 3 is a positive 12I, and 4I times negative 4I is a negative 16I squared. Let's turn my fraction bar out a little bit there. Okay, if I continue over and simplify this, the 12 I cannot do anything with, so I'll just bring that across. Negative 16I and negative 6I gives you a negative 22I. And the 8 with the I squared, remember here again that I squared is the same thing as negative 1. Negative 1 times 8 does make that 8 a negative. Okay, on the bottom I have the 9 with my negative 12 and my positive 12I. Those will cancel, leaving just the 9. And I have the negative 16I squared. Again, I squared is the same thing as negative 1. Negative 16 times negative 1 is a positive 16, and we're good to go there. Last thing I need to do is start to combine some of my just regular real numbers together. So I have 12 minus 8 gives you 4, minus 22I, all over 9 plus 16 is 25. So this is going to be 4 minus 22I, and I'm going to split that 25 and divide both pieces separately. And again, the reason we're doing that is I'm looking, can I reduce these fractions at all? In this case, 4 over 25 I cannot reduce, and 22 over 25, sorry, there's no I on that bottom part there, we can also not reduce. So So this is your answer here, 4 over 25 minus 22i over 25.